From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Srini Gray. We begin in Grenada, where voters head to the polls on Tuesday to elect a new parliament and government. We break down what's at stake for the sister isle, Spice Isle.
45 candidates are vying for 15 seats in the Grenadian parliament. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell is ahead in the polls. If he wins, he could cement his place in history as one of the longest-serving Caribbean leaders. Dr. Mitchell has ruled for more than 2 decades, though not continuously. His new National Party won 6 of 8 general elections in the past 34 years. In the 2013 election, they won all 15 seats contested, the second time in Grenada's history.
We believe that our strongest currency is hope, and the NNP has bring hope to all of you in Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique.
Mitchell is running on the platform of continued economic growth and not changing leadership at a time when the country is on the cusp of perhaps a major economic breakthrough with the discovery of oil in an exploratory well.
It means a lot for the future of this country. Sisters and brothers, one well. We have several more wells which are even more exciting than the one they just found. In other words, Grenada can be a massive supplier of oil and gas. With God's blessing, sisters and brothers, we will be marching on to victory, sisters and brothers.
The main opposition, National Democratic Congress, is led by Nazim Burke. His campaign promises call for better infrastructure, better healthcare, small business growth, and growth in the tourism and agro-processing industries.
The desire to stick with the substance is a necessary requirement for the development of our country. Anybody could get on a stage and whine if they want. But sisters and brothers, when you come to talk about the needs of our people, you must know what you're talking about.
On March 13, 1979, Maurice Bishop, leader of Grenada's left-wing New Jewel movement, led a revolution and seized power from Sir Eric Gairy. Successive governments since then haven't seen this date as something to celebrate. So the real intent behind setting this general election to coincide with the anniversary is confusing to many analysts, especially as it's the second time Prime Minister Keith Mitchell has chosen the date to hold an election. The first was around 28 years ago. Already some Grenadians have taken to the polls. Police officers voted on Friday. Most of them reported a smooth process. Election observers from the OAS and CARICOM have been in the country for a few days monitoring the situation on the ground.
Now joining us live from Grenada to talk about these elections, we have Mikey Hutchinson, host of MikeyLive.com. Hello Mikey, and welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So tell me something, how important is this announcement of oil being discovered? Is this a game changer for the Prime Minister and his party?
Game changer in the context of the election, I'm not too sure. It's a very interesting timing of that announcement. One would argue that it was strategically announced on the eve of the election. Not too sure how that's going to, if at all, it's going to translate into votes. But it's a big deal. There have been a lot of speculations before that gas and oil was found in our waters. That was ignored by the Prime Minister for a while. And they stated that they needed to be sure. And so the announcement was made last night. In terms of, as I said, translating into votes, I am not too sure.
So, Mikey, what are some of the main issues in this election for both parties?
I think one of the issues is healthcare. We have been trying for many years to reduce on the amount of deaths that we've been having with regards to babies, stillbirths, and so on. And we've been trying a lot on that. Persons going into the general hospital and not having for example, medication to take care of those who are sick, availability of adequate healthcare facilities throughout the island. That has been a challenge for many governments, not just this current one, but for those in the past. And so many are looking forward to seeing that at least we place a lot of attention on healthcare. So I know that for both parties, they have been talking about somehow improving our healthcare situation here. Whether or not we're going to see that very soon, that's left to be seen.
And what are the opposition's chances in this election that's happening tomorrow? How do they have a viable chance of getting making any significant inroads or even taking away the prime ministerialship from Dr. Keith Mitchell?
Well, if you're going to leave it up to a recent poll that was done by cadres, which is Peter Wickham, they're stating that based on the research that they have done and the groundwork that they have done, that they have seen the NNP having a good chance of regaining its government position. But if you leave that up to the NDC themselves, they don't see that way, and their supporters don't see that way as well. One has to admit that in the past 2 weeks, the National Democratic Congress have gained significant momentum with their campaign, particularly their social media campaign. They have been doing really good with that. There's also caution to the Prime Minister and his team with regards to the confidence that they would have and how that would inspire or not persons come out on the polls that they've been warned against that by Peter Wickham and other experts who say that, hey, given the fact that your party would have won elections with all the seats, it gives you sometimes the unrealistic expectation that, hey, I could do this again, and probably you would not push as hard as you need to, and even you will not get your people to come out as they should. So you should not be too complacent. And whether or not they have been complacent, I don't know. Some are saying that they have put up a really good fight and they stand a really good chance of getting all 15 seats again. If you ask me, I'm not sure about that.
Well, let me ask you something, because you just mentioned Peter Wickham from Cadres. We actually are going to be talking to Peter Wickham tomorrow to assess the election, but that is official polling. What are people on the ground telling you? Like, what are your neighbors saying about Dr. Mitchell's chances? What are your neighbors saying about Nassim Burke's chances tomorrow?
Okay, so here's this. You get a sense that both parties stand a really good chance based on what is being said on the ground. If the same questions were asked probably a month ago, more people were saying the NNP stands a really good chance. It's a non-contest. But as we got deeper and deeper into the campaign, like I said earlier, I think it's fair to say that the National Democratic Congress have gained some momentum. And so at this point, it is hard to say which party will win. I guess as much it is left to be seen. You see, the thing about it is that Grenadians are very unpredictable. And I know that you've seen the crowds attending the rallies, but that really says nothing much about what the turnout would be like tomorrow.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to us. It looks like we might have to talk to you again this week to try and decipher what actually happened tomorrow in the elections. We've been speaking to Mikey Hutchinson of Mikey Live. He's a talk show host in Grenada. Other news now. Right-wing parties in Colombia have taken the lead in Sunday's legislative elections, marked by a series of irregularities. With almost all of the votes counted, the Diplomatic Center Party, led by former President Alvaro Uribe, came first in the Senate with 19 out of 102 seats. It also came second in the lower house with 32 out of 166 representatives. But the vote for Uribe's party was less than 4 years ago. And along with two other parties of the right, it failed to win the clear majority it was hoping for. This is the first time the FARC, previously known as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, and now known as the Revolutionary Alternative Force of the Commons, appeared on a ballot. The peace deal signed in 2016 guarantees the party 5 seats in the Senate and 5 seats in the lower house until 2026, regardless of the numbered votes it receives in elections. Alongside the parliamentary elections, Colombians also voted in primaries to choose some of the candidates who will stand in May's presidential poll. The former mayor of Bogota, Gustavo Petro, won a clear victory in the center-left primary, while Ivan Duque, a protege of Alvaro Uribe, won the nomination for a number of right-wing parties. The primary vote saw the most serious irregularities, with the head of the Civil National Registry, Juan Carlos Galindo, announcing that not enough ballots had been printed and photocopies were being used instead. Now, people outraged at the photocopy situation posted videos on social media, and at one polling station, the voters chanted, "There is no democracy."
Que vean cómo está la mesa de justicia, el bien reflejo de la justicia. Miren la mesa de justicia. Es la justicia. Y esto es lo que nos quieren aplicar.
Our correspondent in Bogota, Lorena Hoyos, has more on the elections.
On Sunday, Colombian citizens elected 279 legislators who will make up the upper and lower house for the next 4 years. What's become apparent so far is that the usual parties, those made up of the political elite and far-right groups, will remain in power. Regardless, alternative parties gained some ground in these elections. Joining us is political analyst Ángel Zuluaga. Tell us, what are your thoughts?
No hubo la renovación necesaria y deseada del Congreso.
We didn't get the desired renovation of Congress during these elections. Still, there was significant growth of alternative forces that we hope will be a factor in the upcoming presidential elections. Furthermore, we hope they will break new political ground by proposing new laws in Congress.
Propuestas legislativas en el Congreso rompan la marginalidad de estos sectores en la legislatura que viene.
How will these developments affect the peace agreement?
Por lo menos se va a poder ejercer control
político. If these extremely conservative parties remain in control, it will be very hard to put into effect the Havana Agreement.
Que se avance en la aplicación del acuerdo final de La Habana.
Still in Colombia, the National Liberation Army, the ELN, has announced that President Juan Manuel Santos will resume peace talks in Quito, suspended since last January 10th. In an official statement, the guerrilla group warned about the extreme right-wing influence in the Colombian government as the main obstacle to reaching peace. The ELN confirmed its willingness to discuss renewing a bilateral ceasefire, and President Santos told a press conference that he intends to restart talks soon.
When you think about how many lives could be saved through achieving a complete peace agreement for Colombia, I have decided to restart the peace talks with the ELN, the National Liberation Army. To that end, I've given instructions to the chief of the negotiator team, Gustavo Bell, to travel to Quito and begin the talks.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
If you're seeing this, I just got detained by ICE. Trying to really separate me and tear our movement apart, tear our community apart, and I'm not letting that happen, and I need you to stand up for me. I need you to fight for me. As I'm fighting inside, you please fight outside. Call ICE, write letters of support, do whatever we can so we can win and we can get them. And they're retaliating against all activists, all organizers, people who have advocacy and who are out there fighting. And it's my turn to ask for you guys' help. So please help.
Welcome back. The electoral authorities in Cuba have announced the result of Sunday's elections to the Assembly of Popular Power. Almost 7.4 million voters took part. That's 83% of the electorate. The 605 new members will elect a Council of State on April 19th, and the head of that body will become the president of Cuba, as Raul Castro stands down. Miguel Diaz-Canel is the favorite to take over.
I am sure that sooner or later we will also defeat the imperialist design, and we will also bring down the blockade with international support, with recognition of the resistance, of the heroism of our people and dignity. And today here we are also showing dignity.
Bolivian President Evo Morales called on Chile to open up dialogue on the border dispute issue. The matter is scheduled to go before the International Court of Justice in a few days. Bolivian negotiators are scheduled to deliver oral arguments at the ICJ regarding the country's claim to sovereign access to Chile's Pacific coast on March 19th. The Bolivian government filed a lawsuit in the ICJ in 2013 demanding the return of 400 kilometers of coastline that was seized by Chile during the Pacific War.
I have a lot of confidence that Chile will invite us, will convene us to restart the corresponding dialogue. With this request, we will all win. There are no losers. It's my great desire that our people win. And when there is will, when we think of our region and our integration, when we think of peaceful solutions, everything is possible. Nothing is impossible.
Paraguay and Honduras say they're ready to move their embassies in Israel to Jerusalem. But that's on the condition that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits their countries. Along with Guatemala, these countries are following in the footsteps of U.S. President Donald Trump, despite global protests against the move. Only 8 countries in the United Nations Assembly supported the measure last December. And the conservative billionaire Sebastián Piñera was sworn in for his second term as president of Chile, replacing socialist Michelle Bachelet. The conservative politician and businessman has promised to revive the economy. Piñera's first term from 2010 to 2014 was marked by pro-business policies. And the streets of Chile's capital of Santiago were taken over by elderly and disabled Chileans who are demanding lower transit fares and better pensions at a demonstration called the March of the Canes. The protesters say they will be making demands of the newly sworn-in President Sebastián Piñera, whose policies are expected to be to the right of his predecessor, Michelle Bachelet.
We want them to allow us to access the metro with less difficulty than we currently have. This is our primary objective in this first march. We're going to start demanding things because really, it is the moment for change.
The pensions are really low. No one can live off of 125,000 pesos. No one. The rich will always be richer and the poor will always be poorer.
Justice Adrian Dudley Saunders, a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, has been appointed president of the Caribbean Court of Justice with effect from July. Saunders was appointed a judge of the CCJ in 2005. CARICOM leaders confirmed his appointment as president as regional heads of government meeting in Haiti in February. The Caribbean Court of Justice is the final court of arbitration for several Caribbean countries. Others, like Trinidad and Tobago, where the CCJ is housed, still use the Privy Council in London.
With any particular piece of legislation.
And Grenada's underwater volcano known as Cicamjani is seeing increased activity. The National Disaster Management Agency increased the alert level from yellow to orange. Cicamjani is located 8 kilometers from Grenada's north coast. It releases gases which can be extremely dangerous for passing ships. The alert requires ships' captains and other marine operators to stay at least 5 kilometers away from the volcano. Eruptions are common and usually last a few days before it becomes dormant again. The United Nations has warned that fish stocks in the Caribbean are dwindling because of illegal fishing. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says that up to 30% of fishing is illegal, mostly by fishing fleets from Asia and Europe. It is causing a reduction in most fish species, which is robbing the region of $750 million every year in fishing revenue. It warns the lack of regulation is hurting food security and the oceanic ecosystem. And in El Salvador, about 275 volunteer lifeguards took part in the 54th Annual Endurance Swimming Challenge. The aquatic marathon, in which lifeguards swim a distance of 21 kilometers in the open sea, is considered to be the last test that members of the Salvadorian lifeguard have to pass to take on the role of providing safety during the summer season across the country. Time now for another short break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Spain, around 45,000 supporters of Catalan independence demonstrated in Barcelona this Sunday, demanding that Catalan leaders move ahead with electing a new leader. This follows Spain's Supreme Court decision to rule out the release of Catalonian leader nominee Jordi Sanchez from jail. Sanchez was supposed to attend a parliamentary session in the Catalan parliament today so he could be elected. Protesters urged leaders to choose a new leader and continue the independence process. Our correspondent in Barcelona, Joan Ortiz, has sent this report.
The swearing-in of Jordi Sanchez didn't happen. The Spanish justice system didn't let him get out of jail for his swearing-in, despite him and his lawyers trying all legal options to enable him to take office. The independence movement is calling on politicians to go ahead and choose a president of the Generalitat. 45,000 people took to the streets to demand that the pro-independence politicians, who are a majority in Congress, swear in Jordi Sanchez and to implement policies in favor of the new republic. These negotiations are hard because there are independent parties who want to completely break apart from Spain, and there are others that say that it's too complicated and that they don't want more people to end up in jail. Jordi Sanchez's defense team will be taking his case to the Supreme Court to find a solution. Otherwise, he's preparing to take it to the European Court of Human Rights.
The British Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has addressed the House of Commons following a statement by UK Prime Minister regarding the Skripal nerve agent case. Corbyn said the UK response should be focused on reducing conflicts and tensions rather than increasing them, and should not include the cutting off of diplomatic ties with Moscow. His statement followed claims by Prime Minister Theresa May that Russia was probably responsible for the attempted murder of the former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
Hundreds of Syrian residents have protested against the Turkish operation on the border regions of Afrin. The mobilization came after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan threatened again to purge Kurdish People's Protection Units from the town.
We, the people of northern Syria, including Kurds, Arabs, Armenians, Assyrians, condemn the terrorist and criminal acts carried out by the Turkish state since the beginning of the attacks 50 days ago.
In Tunisia, about 1,000 medical students and doctors have protested in front of the headquarters of the Ministry of Health against a legal reform that could worsen working conditions for doctors and limit career opportunities for students. In Japan, demonstrators protested outside official residence of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Monday morning to demand his resignation after a corruption case involving his wife. The scandal first emerged last year following the sale of a property in Osaka for a fraction of the commercial price to a right-wing school operator with ties to the First Lady, Aki Abe.
And finally, the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei has unveiled a 60-meter inflatable rubber raft carrying more than 300 anonymous oversized figures in Sydney, Australia. The artwork, titled Law of the Journey, highlights the plight of refugees across the world. It is the centerpiece of the 2018 Sydney Biennale and is made from the same manufactured rubber as that of vessels that have carried refugees across the Mediterranean Sea. Well, that story brings us to the end of this newscast, but for these and many others, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
We have been current in every event searing our people. Together in every